All right, welcome back to another episode of Net Chasers. Today we have Will Cowen, who's the general manager of Florida State women's basketball. Will, thank you for coming on. I like to open up the podcast with this question. One, if you can give us a 30-second zigzag of your career, what got you to this situation and this position, but also, what is the current state of college athletics?
Sure. Well, first of all, Brian, it's my pleasure to join you today on this podcast. I listen to it often, and it's just been an outstanding resource for the industry. So, as you mentioned, I have just transitioned back on campus at Florida State. I'm the general manager for women's basketball. I'm also doing some player personnel in baseball still. But prior to that, I operated and owned one of our NIL collectives for the over 3 years, working with every sport on campus without except for football, which had their own separate collective. But we certainly had multiple World Series visits and national championships and March Madness experiences and a lot of great student athletes during that time through our NIL. Prior to that, I worked for Coach Sue in women's basketball. Right, I was that was pre NIL,
Right.
pre six coaches. So I was the player development person that all I did was X's and O's and some fundraising and life skills with the players and working on their life and networking. And it was a wonderful opportunity. Uh, it was the COVID year. We started out 14-0, got to the ACC championship game, and the world shut down. And as did our team who graduated.
Mm.
So that was kind of my 2 year run on the court at Florida State. Prior to that, I was an athletic director for 10 years at the community college level out in California. Within that, I was the head men's basketball coach for 3 of those years early on. And that was a tremendous experience. Then prior to that, I was a high school teacher and coach, both at Ventura and Pacifica High School in Oxnard, way back in 2001 when it first opened.
Mhm.
I was the football coach first, but my passion was always basketball, and that's what took most of my time there. And grew up in Ventura. And I always say this, that if it wasn't for my coaches and the people looking after me, from age 10 to 18 or so, I don't know where I'd be, but I sure as heck wouldn't be here visiting with you. So, if that's okay, you want me to jump in here a little bit of the state of college athletics?
Well, and before
So,
you do, to
yeah,
have two kids from the 805, Oxnard and Ventura, on a podcast, I think that's pretty unique in itself.
particularly when I'm sitting in the 850, 2 hours from the Atlantic Ocean. But yes, I think it's great. If you drive on I-10 long enough, you can get from Santa Monica to Tallahassee.
That's
You
right.
just may have to stop a couple times for gas. Um, but Yeah, so the state of college athletics, and I speak to classes at the graduate level all the time. We are entering college athletics 3.0. And
Mm.
3.0 is a world where the initial goal is always to recruit first class student athletes, get them a great education, have a great basketball experience, graduate, and develop professionals. That's always been the goal. If you're successful as a college basketball coach at any level, that's always been the goal. That part is unchanged. Everything in the middle, Brian, is what's changed because there is now a transactional business contractual element with the schools paying the players and then managing the outside marketing deals and the licensing, the jerseys, the trading cards. So there's a brand element that the schools now control, and that's why it's 3.0. The
Yeah.
2.0 version is what we lived from COVID to July 1st, pre house, where we had an unregulated version of what I just described. Many call it the Wild Wild West. I don't know if that's a strong enough term. I would go closer to like a World War III,
Right.
which is what that became on the recruiting trail, as we all know. And that impacted every level with the Division One teams getting older and more experienced. There are fewer roster spots now for those community college transfers, for those high school student athletes that now are having a more difficult time finding roster spots because we have 25-year-old quarterbacks playing college football now. Um, so that was 2.0. And then 1.0 is what we all grew up on, where a burrito was an illegal recruiting enhancement and you'd forfeit your whole season.
That's
So
right.
That's kind of the state of college sports right now. People ask me like, what are the main hot topics to follow? Most important thing you want to follow right now is the dynamic in the nation's capital, the SCORE Act, and whether or not there is federal legislation over NIL.
Yeah.
Why do we need that? Because there's a patchwork of 29 different state laws that are not aligned. So that's kind of the biggest issue. And it's very political. There's other constituents from the state of Texas and people not agreeing on this. And certainly the G5 and the mid majors don't like it, because the second thing to keep an eye on is the governance of the NCAA. It's moving to where a lot of the policing and violations are going to be handled outside the NCAA. So that's the College Sports Clearinghouse. So that'd be like the second big thing to follow, right? So it's the SCORE Act. It's how this College Sports Commission, the clearinghouse, for lack of better words, operates, right? And then the last piece is to keep your eye on Title IX and any lawsuits coming in pertaining to why the men and the women are being compensated in different ways. Right now, they're not employees. They have no union. So those are kind of the big issues to follow in college sports.
So let's start with those three. Wearing your hat, obviously, it's a very unique hat because one, you were a coach.
Yep.
Two, you were an athletic director. You got into the space of collectives and raising money in order for players to have a different experience.
Yeah.
And then now you're segmented back into women's basketball. So talk a little bit about what's your advantage in this role, in this space of 3.0.
Yeah.
But also at the same time, where's the forward thinking that you may have, that your lens and framework can bring Brooke and that staff, but also Florida State?
Yeah, that's good. I should bring you in to talk to the next official visit. That's perfect. The only thing I would add to that progression of being a head coach at every level, don't forget, I've done it with the high school level, the college level, small college. Somewhere in there, the two things I omitted is the 14 years under Pete Newell and Andy Myers teaching professional level post players in the summers.
Yeah.
And the fact that when you own the collective, you're also an agent. So I now have 60 active sports agencies in my phone at all times, right?
Wow.
So that's probably the biggest thing that comes with me making this decision to come back with Coach Brooke, who's a longtime friend, and continue working with baseball, is I've got the background to understand. I know how recruiting works, right? For at every level. When you run the collective, you understand how the money piece works, but the agent piece is really the key. Our coaches do a great job relationally, and I'm speaking at this point for women's basketball and baseball because that's who I work for at the time.
Of course.
And not that all the other ones don't, but in my role, I really allow the coaches to be relational with the players, the families, and the support system, right? I only get involved there selectively as needed, right? My key is to deal with the agents and the business on the periphery to keep it comfortable for the head coach, right? You never want the head coach to be in the GM job. That's the idea, is you got to have a little separation of church and state. And I would hope that I'm uniquely qualified to do that.
Now go deeper into that. Why should there be a separation? But knowing the Power Fours are a lot different than the non-football schools. So where could be some balance, and what should administrators be thinking at that level where a head coach has to serve at it, right?
Well, okay. If I'm an administrator right now, I'm going to answer the lower level, the group, everything under the big four. Well, in basketball, we'll go the big five. I'll throw the Big East in there, and the pack. I hate using that terminology, but you know what I'm saying. There's a revenue cliff somewhere around 70 or 80 Division I schools, and whether you call them Power 5, 10, 12, big, little, small, there's a huge revenue cliff somewhere between Oregon State, Washington State, and everybody else.
Right.
Okay, let's just throw that out there. If I'm an administrator right now at a non-high revenue school, right, anything that's not like what I just said,
right,
my number one liability is I better hire one person on my senior staff that understands NIL. and rev share. That is the number one liability. So if you're an athletic director, and I've sat in the chair for a decade, there's really about three things that cannot go wrong, right? One, you can't steal. You can't mess with the money. You got to be straight with all the finances and your expense reports, yada, yada, yada. Two, relationally, you need to make good decisions and not do bad things from a human resource perspective as a leader, right?
Mm-hmm.
And the third one after that is you don't want to have a major compliance blow up. Well, in NIL 3.0, NIL is the compliance blow up.
Mm-hmm.
That's the issue. The academic piece is there, but that's pretty under control now.
Yeah.
It's really hard to cheat academically. The gambling's there, but that's pretty well monitored. If you're an athletic director at a smaller college, your number one thing of liability is unregulated NIL because your coaches are competitive. They want to win, and they will push and push and push until the point where you have to answer the question.
Yeah.
So at a smaller level, if I'm in the Big West at my alma mater at Santa Barbara or wherever that is, you need to hire someone on your senior staff that can manage this for all the sports. Okay. Because at that point, you're talking a couple $1 million, I would say, maybe a little more. That's a one-person gig. When I ran the collective and we were at $4 million a year, I could run that myself with 3 or 4 staff members. So if you're half of that, if you're a couple $1 million worth of NIL a year in rev share, one person and a couple interns can manage that. Right. So that's my talk in that direction.
Yeah.
If you coach at that level, you have 6 accountable coaches. One of them should really not be a fully basketball immersed person. Someone on your 6 must speak this language, and that you would probably call them assistant coach / GM. It's a dual person. Like, you're not going to at that level have a GM and 6 coaches, but you better have someone within your core 6 that gets this. And they think about that every day before they start watching film. Right? Because you can,
that's good.
All the schematics go out the window when your players are upset with that financial dynamic in the locker room. So you got to manage that. Now, transitioning that to the big level. Okay. When you're in a revenue positive situation, a couple $100 million athletic department, which is where those of us in the top of college football sit, we're talking a couple $100 million a year.
Right.
That's big business. Yeah. Now, that is not a one-person job. You're going to see, as we have multiple GMs, and then within the athletic department, your sponsorship team better have their act together. Your fundraising team needs to have its act together. Your marketing and social media department have to have their act together, all pertaining to personal branding and NIL, right? And then you got to manage both the salary cap and the outside NIL. So it's a much bigger puzzle when you get into a place that puts 70, 80,000 people in a stadium every weekend for football.
Well, it sounds like administrators need to think a little bit about restructure, maybe, or at least, reshuffle of the table.
What once was student athlete development and leadership, all very valuable areas, needs to transition and include that personal branding and business element. Some people do it there. Other schools may do it through like a Learfield, like a Sooner Sports Properties or a Longhorn Sports Properties. They've kind of taken that route of building it into the sponsorship people that deal with the businesses. You got to build it somewhere.
Yeah.
If you're in a top 20 in either men's, women's basketball, football, whatever your mix is, baseball, if you're in the upper echelon to those sports, you're not hiring a person, you're hiring a department. And it needs to sit somewhere. Every school is set up differently. Kentucky has like a private LLC over their athletic department now, so they can do it much differently than somebody in, say, North Carolina. It's going to look different.
Yeah.
But it's not a person, it's a team.
It's so interesting because we saw this coming, and this might be getting into a little bit of the politics side where, the NCAA had its opportunity, but we gave it up to the states. And now, to your point, every state looks different. Every athletic department has to now go into that. So where, like, what would be the next? Like, how do we move into an area where, yes, programs are hiring GMs, and the reshuffle might be happening, and obviously there are some programs that are behind, but how do we corral everybody so that now there's a benefit out of all of this?
Well, so what you're basically saying is, how do you put the toothpaste back in the tube?
Right,
Um,
right,
and it's very challenging. So there's a couple things and this is Will Cowen's opinion, okay? And I try to be nonpartisan when I say things like that.
right.
Um, the first issue you have to tackle is, do we or are we going to continue to have north of 360 Division I schools all playing for the same prize? Most of us hope that we can maintain that in some level. But the dollars and cents in that top 20 or 30 of college football and into March Madness are billions, right? If you add up the CFP and March Madness, men's and women's, it's like over 3 billion a year paid out profit per year. And there's units involved in that. And then you have baseball and softball growing. They're not there yet, but they're growing. So you're talking billions and billions of dollars. And so, yeah, if you're George Mason or you're UC Riverside, there's going to be hard conversations of how we preserve all that.
Mm.
So that's battle one. So how do we do that? If you make every student athlete an employee of the university, it'll go the opposite direction. You at that point are creating the haves and the have-nots. So I think you probably need a hybrid solution, Brian. You've got to figure out a way at a certain level of football and basketball to allow those students to have some sort of unionized representation, which is the only legal way to enforce a salary cap. Just so we all know, there's this antitrust law that exists, and the only legal way to have a salary cap is through some form of bargaining. Does it have to be a traditional union like Ford Motor? No, right? We need to figure out how to give the student athletes a voice and bargain on rules that everybody will follow. That takes like forward thinking, creative people. And it's not pleasant, but that's the only way to govern this, is if everybody can agree on the rules, and then we're not incentivized to cheat. Right now, if you're a coach that is at a certain level and you have a state law protecting you, you have no reason to pay attention to a salary cap. Because you're going to get paid so much more for winning that national championship, unfortunately, and the bonuses and the staff, and it's people's careers on the line here, right?
Yeah.
So at the end of the day, until we can regulate the rules to be in one place, it's going to be really hard.
So is that the NCAA coming together with policymakers from the states,
Well,
Congress?
they're trying at the federal level, but they're not trying to do what I just said. The problem is they're trying to bypass in my opinion, they're trying to bypass the Sherman Act and all the antitrust laws and all of Title IX and just say, here's a system that we think will work and it will be highly beneficial to the rich and very challenging for everybody else to stay afloat. But it's in the best interest of the elite commissioners in the room to do it a certain way. Because remember, at the end of the day, people's salaries have bonuses, and I'll just leave it at that. There's a lot of incentive at the highest level to have more teams in the tournament. So let's hold on. That's the first part. The second part is the broadcast piece, and because now you have all these TV contracts that are separate, like the NFL and the NBA have a single TV contract. And there is a broadcast act that was passed in the 60s that prohibits college football right now from kind of aggregating all the media rights for the regular season. But those are the two big holdups, right?
Yeah.
You got to tackle those two things before you do anything else. You got to figure out how we're going to get the media rights sorted out. There's a day coming very soon where Ohio State is not going to like making the same as Northwestern. And I will put a feather in Michael Alford's cap, our AD. And that's not a shameless plug because he got blasted for 3 years publicly. Yep. But in the ACC, we have an uneven revenue distribution for a reason. 13 million people or more watched us play Alabama 2 weeks ago. There are other schools, to remain nameless, that are not driving that revenue.
Right.
So,
right. Well, and that's where I was kind of going to go is there's just new players
Yep.
in the picture now where women's basketball is now earning units.
Yep.
You have the Big Ten with its own media rights and controlling those teams and what games they can play and broadcast. So like you talked about forward thinking, who should be in the room? So you alluded to some of the conference chairmans and whatnot,
Yeah.
but like where is that conversation? How do we, as forward thinkers, get the right people in the room to just start the dialogue or at least shape a model?
Okay, they it's not like they haven't tried. Okay, I'm not trying to sound like no one's thought of this, that I'm like Nostradamus. Everything I just
Yeah.
told you has been discussed.
Right.
I don't know. It's really challenging because the money is so heavy to the SEC and the Big Ten that they've already gotten control of CFP. So the only dangling fruit is March Madness, of which the NCAA is holding on to with CBS and Turner
Yeah.
for as long as they can. And then you have coaches that are competitive people. And some of the old dogs do not like new tricks, and I'll be polite. But there's still some old school coaches that are highly successful that we all grew up loving in the Final Four, but they don't want any part of this. They want to protect their little fiefdoms as long as they can.
Mm.
So I think it's going to take some time for the media rights to shake out. You've got to get a rule. You've got to deal with the players and the media rights before you can even think about talking about anything like the NCAA governance, in my opinion.
Right. Got it.
And they're really doing a good job of, I mean, they meaning the smaller schools are starting to speak up. There are some politicians that are starting to talk sense. There are people trying.
Yeah. Right.
Right. It's for as long as there's two conferences that control the CFP, it's going to be that's an uphill battle for the rest of the world looking in on
Yeah.
the Big Ten and the SEC. The other big change is ESPN's model becoming more streaming heavy and subscriber based.
Yeah. Right.
I don't know. I don't know how that's going to exactly work, but we'll
Yeah.
see.
So let's pull back a little bit and let's talk about women's basketball.
Yep.
Just simply because you're in that chair,
Yeah.
and I know you wear a couple hats with baseball, but women's basketball has been on this uptick for
Yep.
a number of years. I think it most recently got its flowers a little bit. But what are you doing to help that program and Brooke with her vision and
Yeah.
whatnot, but specifically bringing in some of that fundraising skill sets that you
100%.
have with the collective. So what's forward thinking with your staff?
Well, I'll tell you this. I am shouting from the rooftops in every meeting that I attend on this campus. And fortunately, I'm not new, so the relationships over the 8 years help, and I can get away with this little. So Brooke Wyckoff's the differentiator. She's the X factor. All right. Her jersey's hanging in the gym. She has 2 bricks next to Bobby Bowden. She came to college, Coach Sue's first year. Her senior year, they finally get to the tournament in 2001, like on Brooke's back, All-American year, right? Which prior to that, there were only maybe 3 or 4 in the whole history of the program. So 2001, Brooke drags us into the tournament, gets drafted, spends 9 years in the W, comes back, recruiting coordinator, Elite 8, Tasha Howard, post coach, defensive coordinator, Elite 8, Sweet 16, that whole group that came through. Offensive coordinator, associate head coach. Started the year 14-0, ACC title game. COVID shuts the world down. Would have loved to play Sabrina in Oregon that year. That would have been the seeding at that time where it would have headed toward.
Right.
And then, coach gets sick with cancer. She takes over as head coach, goes back. Now she's the head coach. And what have they done since? Well, they lead the country in pace. We lead the country in total offense. Never missed the tournament. That's the X factor.
Yeah.
So for me, it's not that difficult to capture that message and project it to the high-end donors first, then cultivate the existing donors, right? Take them on some trips, yada, yada, yada. And then the missing link is to really push the connection to the students and to the community to help drive the attendance, because all that matters now. But for me,
Yeah.
it's just driving that. I don't need, I mean, it shows because our recruiting has been off the charts in the last 6 months, as far as all the transfers would have started on Power Five programs that are on our team now, right? So you're talking 2 years in a row, A&M, a Texas Tech, Notre Dame, Maryland, BC. So we have the depth and we've got great players. And now we're starting to sign or get commitments that we really like,
Yeah.
I should say. So for me, that's the message. And by the way, within all that, we've had 17 players drafted into the W.
Yeah.
What else
Yeah.
do we need to say?
Right.
It's my job to just it sounds simple, but the strategy is, how do you take that message and connect it to the right dots, right?
Yeah.
So you're going to see me on a football trip to Virginia. I'm going. That's a networking trip for the program, right? You will see me, if we're in the Dallas market, spend another day with the Seminole Club after we play SMU, right? When we go out west, there'll be networking opportunities with the Bay Area Seminole clubs, right? We spend all that time in Carolina and Atlanta. We got to make those connections.
Yeah.
So that'll be my thing. My thing is relational, right? Like
And
that's how I do it.
right. And then so that's within the program. Go to the next level. Where's the support from the administration? How has that been, the working relationship with the donors within the athletic department?
Yeah.
Go into the weeds a little bit of that working relationship and some of the wins that you've created with the department.
Well, it starts over time. When I got here 8 years ago, we had like $18,000 in our fundraising account, and at one point we had it built up well over $1 million. So
Wow.
it takes time to build those relationships.
Yeah.
The boosters. So Florida State's unique because the athletic department operates, and then the fundraising is Seminole Boosters. It's a separate organization. So, and then marketing and sponsorship sits in there. So it's a little blurry sometimes because you've got 4 different departments to work with.
Right.
But it's communication. The support's there. We're well funded. We have the resources we need to be competitive. It's really on us to continue recruiting at a high level and get to the second weekend. It's a lot easier for me to bang down somebody's door when we get back to the second weekend.
Right.
Right now, it's about recruiting, and it's about really welcoming those 7 new players we recruited in, and making sure at a high level that we're putting the correct product on the floor first.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
that's the deal. It's the relationships, it's telling the story and making sure the product's right. And then we can go in and bang for money, or bang for more. But make no mistake, we are not poorly funded.
Yeah.
We've had tremendous support in all of our resources. We're not taking trains to go play games. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
We are in the upper class of first world. So,
Yeah.
but there's room to, sure, there's another place that you got to chase, the legacy program, so to speak, in the women's game. And we've knocked on that door, but now we got to kick that door down a little bit.
Yeah. So capture a little bit the entire women's basketball scope. So you talked about, kind of that focus 50, and then everyone else. Like what should all women's basketball programs be thinking about as it relates to this 3.0 era that we're in?
Yeah.
How can they get better? How can they get more efficient? How could they work with their administrators on setting up, maybe not at the level, but at least the systems, and put those in place?
Well, we've kind of talked about the one thing. You got to have someone on your staff that focuses on it every day.
Yep.
And make no mistake, I will be on the bench, and there will be a point in time where I have some basketball duties in this thing as well. But been doing this long enough. I don't need a ton of prep time for that.
Yeah.
Right. So you got to have somebody that thinks about it every day. That's step one. I would say the biggest thing, and this is the advantage that the women's game has over the men's, players are better on social media. They're more compelling. They stay in college longer. And if I gave anybody advice, it's tell your story.
Mm.
Tell your story and reveal the person, the student, the athlete, right? The men's game has always been so focused on the head coach and the stars. And to an extent, obviously, the women's game will do that. But you've got to train the network folks of what needs to be said.
That's
Right.
good.
I'll just leave it at that.
Yeah.
I don't want to turn on certain broadcasts and hear the same 3 to 4 narratives every week.
Right.
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 If we have a story to tell, which we did last year, and it took a team of people to do it, we told that story pretty well.
Yeah.
Of our nation's leading offense.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
This year I'll have a new story. I don't know what it is yet, but we'll figure it out. It's going to be based on having an elite culture. It's going to be based on making an impact with legitimate big physical players, that play at a great pace. But more importantly, we've got to feature them as people off the court and in life, right? Like the outfits and the wardrobe and their outside interests. It's compelling. So that's my advice to everybody. You have to make the game appealing to lots of different people. So you can't pigeonhole your marketing in any business now, whatever business you run. Your marketing, if you market to a certain demographic or a certain age group or a certain cultural part of the country, you're missing out on the rest, right? So you've got to find a way to make basketball appealing to lots and lots of people. And those trigger points are different. And once you understand that, you'll have a better chance gaining the traction when you've got a diverse set of marketing and goals.
Now, a number has been kind of thrown out where, there's administrations already deciding kind of that 75-25 of where the money is going to be allocated.
Don't listen to that. That's anybody that puts that out there is just whatever.
Yeah.
Don't listen to that. Yeah.
So let me kind of push you in a direction, or just in terms of the answer. So where will women's basketball get its return? Will they get the return? What does that kind of look like? And then what should administrators be thinking about with not only football and men's basketball, but with women's basketball?
Well, every school is different. And one of the things is not a problem at Florida State.
Yeah.
Women's basketball can be a tremendous application driver to the university. We already have that covered. Like Florida State doesn't need to do a lot of marketing to get great students to apply. So that argument's kind of out the window. The numbers are so heavy as far as because the women's game is like just starting to take off like the men did in the 80s. Same as the NBA and the W. The gap between a men's share and a women's share in the tournament is so great to where you can't make the argument like, hey, we go to the Final Four every year in the women, so I need the same budget the men's staff has for everything. Like, it's just not going to work other than maybe one example across the country, because the revenue is not there. Football and men's basketball still drive 95% of the revenue. I will tell you what places like South Carolina have done incredibly well. They know that. And they know that even though they sell the gym out every game, that those numbers still don't touch certain pointers. What I will shout out South Carolina is they understand what's called economic impact. And what they've done is be able to show that because of that great women's basketball culture they've built up there, the entire business base of Columbia benefits. That's the biggest way to tell your story, especially in a college town, is not only your revenue for the athletic department, but what your team is doing for the community and for the broadcast reach and for the social media and the digital marketing. That's how women's basketball is going to get their share. It's going to take a while to catch up on the typical ticket sales, media rights, sponsorship. That's going to take time.
Yeah.
It's an evolution. It's just going to take time because the game is younger. I will say this, the talent coming through the pipeline right now, off the chart.
Yeah,
in the women's
right.
game. If you take the athleticism out and just look at skill set, it might be higher than the American men's players. If you just look at fundamental skills.
Yeah. So you've worn all these hats.
Yeah.
Which one do you like the most? This is kind of a loaded question, just one of those fun
Yeah.
ones. Which ones do you like the most? But also, it's probably hard to turn them all off, though. All the other ones.
Yeah. I'll touch on that in the second part. At the end of the day, yeah, I'm doing them all. I was probably at my quote unquote happiest when we were knocking down the doors of hosting an NCAA tournament before COVID and doing the fundraising, the relationships, and being part of that team, because you really got to lock in. Like for me, the thing I didn't like about being an athletic director is I couldn't lock in on one team. You had to
Oh,
be like a
interesting.
Swiss Army knife.
Yeah.
And you're a triage unit putting out fires, right? When you run a collective, it's the same thing. I'm recruiting 10 teams at once and it's a triage unit. You're constantly putting out fires. Um, Even when I was a head coach at the high school and college, at the high school level, we were good. We went to the Division I state tournament at Pacifica. First time anyone did that in like 80 years from the city of Oxnard. It was great. But if you ask me when I was the best version of myself, like coaching and everything, it may have been when I was Ann Larson's assistant. We beat Long Beach Poly and went to a state Final Four 20 years ago. Like
Right.
that might have been where I was at the like best at that point in my 20s. Um, and then since I've been at Florida State, that was probably a similar feeling. So yes, I made the decision to come back. So I only had two teams to worry about instead of 10. And the results are kind of there because we have done an outstanding job in those programs collectively of bringing in top talent to play for us this year. So
Yeah.
that's kind of in my way the result of locking in on two teams instead of 10 is I'm able to in some way impact that. Make no mistake, it's a team effort. The head coaches, the staffs, I'm just one piece of that pizza, but it's a lot better for me when I can lock in on two teams.
What
Yeah.
what's the I mean, the game is so like it's so marginal, right? Like the
Yeah.
difference between, who you all are competing is so different than what,
Yeah.
you know, Loyola Marymount or, but so what's the difference maker? And it's not so much the big picture, but even what you all are doing. What do you think the difference maker is between that win and then, just staying status quo?
Well, that's loaded. Before I address that, I want to go back to something that'll feed into that of how do you turn it off?
Yeah.
Um, it's very hard. I've had to work really hard to force myself to put the phone down for a while, use the sleep functions. Um, I work out every day, so that part's easy. But you've got to schedule time for self-care. So that I just need to throw that in there because this job will beat you down.
Yeah.
So you got to schedule self-care into your calendar. Both working out and then also just making sure you're going to those concerts when you can. For me, making sure I'm going to the beach a few times and hearing, doing things that I like to do as a West Coast person that are important to me.
Yeah.
Seeing friends in other places. Okay, so now back to how do you differentiate? Um, Fit. The thing is you can't go wrong with the top 50 players in women's basketball in any recruiting class. They're all very talented. You have to decide who's the best fit. Family, player, are they a gym rat? Are they a film studier? Are they coming to me with questions? Those don't have to be yes, but every coach needs to figure out what their non-negotiables are.
Right.
And that's the biggest thing is you have to identify the right fit for your culture. Um, and the way you want to operate day to day. Because the biggest problem that you need to avoid in recruiting is putting on an act at the home visit and the official visit and on the Zooms. And then when they get there, it's like the Wizard of Oz, where the
Yeah,
Wicked Witch
right.
of the East flies in. Okay. That's the deal. You got to be authentic and you got to find the right fit. I
Yeah.
think we have, and it takes time. Like Brooke and I have worked together now for 8 years. Link in baseball, multiple trips to the tournament with like four different teams. We've been together now for 4 years. I know what he wants. I can help him filter that from a relational piece. He doesn't need my help in baseball.
Yeah.
Right. So you have to have that synergy with the head coach. And in my role, I have to kind of serve as that filter sometimes.
Yeah.
Um,
So what would you tell a young aspiring, this your lane along with a few others, there's going to be someone thinking, "Hey, I want to be a GM at the collegiate level."
yep.
What would you tell them? What would you like? What are you telling your 24-year-old self about that
Yep.
position that you get to sit in?
That's a great question. I'm going to answer this the same thing I tell every grad class I speak to on campus. The first piece is you've got to work on your relationally how you interact with people in the field,
Mm.
right? It's not who you know, it's who knows you. So I go into a whole thing about making sure that you're intentional of writing notes, exchanging contact, and just treating people the right way. Because nothing else works in your business if you don't treat people the right way. Okay. It doesn't matter that if you can't cross that bridge as a unit, nothing else will work. So that's one. The second piece is the preparation piece. Read every day about NIL. You want to be a GM? Read every day. Watch podcasts. Do all the things to educate yourself to be prepared for the question before someone pops the question. Because you never know. It's what I always say. It's what you do when no one's watching.
Yeah.
Right. So being prepared. And then the third thing is if you want to be a GM or you want to work in college basketball, period, or baseball, whatever, football, if you want to work college sports, you must be all in, right? You got to be able to drop your bag at the door and be all in for that period of time. Because it's a grind, right? So
Yeah.
those are the three things.
Love it. Love it. Got a couple more questions for you. What 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 do you love about this job at this point in your career with all the experience, the people you get to work with? What is the beauty of that role at this point in not only women's basketball but college athletics?
Mm-hmm.
Like what's special about it?
Well, one is I want to see my head coaches succeed, right? Brooke, first and foremost, and obviously my relationship with Link in baseball. So for me, not being the head coach, I don't have to do I do these things, but I don't have to address the media after a close loss, right? So it's seeing our head coaches be successful. That's number one. And then number two is knowing that it's always about the student athletes. So putting them really as my day-to-day priority at a high level is making sure that they have what they need.
Hmm.
Those are the two things that matter to me at this point. I don't need to be in the big chair right now. Might it happen again one day? Who knows? But I'm more than comfortable making an impact both to our coaches and our players to be great.
Yeah, I want to follow up real quick on that point, and I think I know what you would say because you alluded to some of these earlier. But if you were to sit in that chair again, what are your first two top priority and action items in your first 90, 100 days?
Wow, that is a loaded question, and I love it. So for me, there's two things that I think you have to have. I'll put the AD hat on. I think that's where you're going with that, right?
Yeah,
Or
yeah.
head coach, either one. But let's say you're the AD. There's two things you have to have that supersede everything. Is one, your coaches have to be great teachers. So the first thing you need to do is make sure that you're building that relationship with the coaches. And if you're the head coach, it's with your assistants. You have to have great teachers that can communicate what you want. Is really important. And that's not just a sport thing. That's in the whole realm of the program.
Right.
Um, and then two, you have to have a culture of, for lack of better terms, it's all in compliance, however you want to call it. You can't have rogue. You got to identify where the rogue things are and start working on either improving or changing things that are liabilities. Half of being a leader is not beating yourself.
Hmm.
All right. And that's for players. I would tell a player, a coach, anybody, don't beat yourself, right? Eliminate things that are a heavy liability to you, your success,
Right.
or fix them. Because if you don't beat yourself, then you have a chance to win every night. So that would be the two biggest things. And then obviously the revenue piece. Like, we got to be tied. We got to have a comprehensive revenue plan with whatever I'm doing.
Yeah.
For that. Those would be the three.
Where do in that revenue plan, where do the coaches come into play with that? Or is it your role?
Well, that's great. You got to understand their needs first. That's where the coaches come in. What are your needs? All right, coaches, what are you capable of doing to help generate revenue? Some coaches are great speakers. Other of them like to plan events. But every coach that asks me for money better be a participant in the process.
There's
and they
the
do
magic.
it different ways.
Yeah.
There's different strengths. Like, I could go through every head coach at Florida State and tell you at least one way they helped me as the NIL CEO with my job, right? I don't ask them all to help me raise money, but the ones that are good at it, I do. There's others that I just need them to host an event and be relational, and I'll take care of the rest, right?
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
or just make sure when you're in front of the hot mic that you say the right things about NIL.
Yeah.
Every coach is different, but
Yeah.
they got to be in on it, right? So that's that, and then you got to manage it. Like, there's no way around it.
Right.
You can't just sit in the Oval Office and send emails. It won't work.
Yeah. Got to get out. Got to get out. Well, before this last question, Will, I just want to appreciate this conversation. I think you went deep in so many different areas that I think college coaches are aware of, but we may not just know where to start the conversation.
Right.
But we need help with the administration, with a plan, kind of the goals. But I think you laid out a huge advantage with information. But also want to just give you your flowers of your career. I think this career in athletics is so unique because you get to bob around and you just don't know where you're going to end up. So, again, two kids from the 805, I really appreciate the time that you put into this. It is an upstart, so we'll see where it goes. But last question, it's a fill in the blank that we ask. The future of college athletics will be blank because blank.
The future of college athletics will be stronger because of passionate people coming through the pipeline. That's what I see.
That's good.
Yeah.
Passion leads us all.
Yeah, it really does. I believe there's a lot of people in the business coming up that want to get this right, and we will get it right, but you got to kind of be patient and grow with us. Clearly the product, people are showing up and tuning in. So we don't have a product knowledge problem. We just got to have some adjustments in our leadership at the national levels. Thought process adjustments, not people. It's not the people. It's just thought process.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah.
Well, Will, thank you very much.
You got it.
To all of those who tuned in, thank you again for joining us. Please join us with another episode of Net Chasers. If you're on YouTube, subscribe. If you're on Apple Podcasts, obviously follow. And a new episode will drop on Tuesdays. Thank you very much.
All right. Thank you, Brian.